Well, it's a pleasure to be here. My first time in India, so I thank you very much. I have to clear something up, but how we say the name of the business, given Matthew was calling me OO. So the way it really works is that we're O Media, because I'm being serious now, we're in business. Most of the time when I see Matthew, we're in our party mode, so we're OO Media when we party. And we're very flexible as well, because if we ever make a mistake, we're uh-oh. So a really easy business to understand. Sorry, where's it gone? Righto. The slides aren't coming up here. Go back to the beginning if you can when you go, because it's not coming up. Go back to the front slide with the orange. It's coming up on these ones, but it's not up here. I'll start off anyway. Just a little bit about us as a business, if I can, to start with. We're a listed company in Australia. We operate in Australia and New Zealand. We're in what we call the ASX top 150 in Australia. We're about 1.2 billion Australian in value. I think the exchange rate's about 51 rupees to $1 Australian dollar. We operate in multiple products across the out-of-home media, and I'll explain why we do that today. If you can go back to the first slide, thanks. The reason we came up with the name O Media, or O, many years ago, the first slide, the cover slide, thanks, was that we decided that, you know, there was an opportunity to be, if you like, a beer company and call a brand beer. We could call ourselves after the out-of-home industry, and that's how we started with the name. The term unmissable became our tag in 2014 when we realised that the reality was, whilst digital was growing, there was a unique strength brewing for out-of-home. And that is that we were the only unmissable medium. We couldn't be switched off, we couldn't be skipped, and the thumb, with mobile continued to dominate, wouldn't be the driving force behind the process. And unmissability goes further than that. If you think of what the IAB, the International Online Bureau in the US, talks about, they talk about that there's minimum 8 billion of media fraud online. So that's $8 billion of dollars spent in media fraud. That's actually larger than the entire out-of-home industry in the US. And so you get to start to see that we as a medium have a really unique opportunity in that because we are unmissable, we can really grow the effects and results. In Australia, there we go. In Australia, we've seen dramatic growth in the last number of years. But there was two reasons when that came in. The first was in 2009 when the global financial crisis hit. We actually dropped greater than the media pie did. We had a 12% decline in revenue across the industry. The media industry was down about 6%. And we decided as a group that we'd all work closer together. Even though we had launched audience measurement earlier, we decided we'd work closer together. And that was to ensure that we didn't let that happen again. The second change came around 2012, 2013, when we started to bring more digital into the fold. But at the same time, of course, that investment was occurring because we recognised there was other media changes happening. We saw newspapers entering a cycle of about 15 to 20% revenue decline per annum. That meant there was going to be more available dollars. We saw television audiences had peaked and were now in decline and terminal decline in Australia. And we saw a unique opportunity that we could really change the way we as a medium worked to present ourselves. Today, we represent about 6% of the total media pie, and as an industry, we've set ourselves a goal of 10%. But the reason we can set that goal of 10% is not because we want to set an arbitrary goal. It's because on sound, basic media planning principles and effectiveness principles, we can actually deliver on that for clients today. Already today we have major clients like Apple and Samsung, etc., who are above that as a percentage of their spend on out-of-home. Interesting. And our biggest client growth areas are in fact tech companies, they are new media companies, and they are media itself. They are new digital online businesses who are realising they can't just stay on digital, and they're moving into out-of-home to broaden their audience capability or audience reach capability. So as a medium, we are set to be able to grow. But I think just as important as we start into this presentation, we recognise that of the in Australian terms, 14 billion was the size of the media market. that we could only pitch for about 8 billion of the media market, because we couldn't deliver some of the things that clients were after in terms of some speed issues, flexibility of creativity, etc., etc. And that once we got digital to scale, that we would be able to deliver those differences, and that would again reach a point where acceleration. As a business, O decided in 2011 that we would change our business model totally. An out-of-home company pretty well looked like this. If you could imagine a roof, which was your people, they were the glue of your business. You then might have had one product underneath you, and then your operations and systems. The reality was we said we have to become a business with a new roof. The new roof is audience or client objectives. We'd have to build 4 new pillars in our business: data, content. When I say mobile, I meant location and how we connect and what are all the different ways we can work with mobile. And we had to also have media tech capabilities to go at speed. We set ourselves a 4-year cycle, 2 4-year plans to change that. The first of those was we had to identify which areas of out-of-home we should play in to be able to truly deliver on an audience play, because not every product gives you that opportunity. So we divided the medium into 3 different classifications. We called them drive-by. So that meant that the majority of the audience was actually viewing it when driving by. In Australia, for example, street furniture under the audience measurement system shows that 80% plus of the audience that drives past street furniture or views street furniture is actually driving. So it is in effect primarily a drive-by medium. We brought in walk-by. Environments that you are primarily walking by, and how you can interacting with those. Things like you're walking through airports, walking through shopping centres, etc. Train stations, they become walk-by environments. And the final one, because we couldn't think of a better name, was standby. And that was the areas where you have more dwell. You can see more volume of ads, and importantly, we suspected we'd have to bring other opportunities to those mediums. This became important on a number of fronts. Firstly, in a digitisation sense, it was able to classify where we were going to have regulatory issues or not. It was going to determine where we'd be full motion digital or static digital. It was going to determine from a media and advertising sense what was the different ways we would interact, or the products would interact with the consumer. And fourth, and probably equally important, we also recognised that in many environments, just playing ads was not going to be enough, that you needed to bring other utility to the value of what the medium would deliver. If we then look at what that's meant from a point of view of inventory and inventory to total revenue, the reality is that digital billboard inventory has obviously grown, but it's still a smaller percentage of the inventory than classics. The reality is, however, that it delivers greater revenue than classic already. In a walk-by environment, obviously you had no regulatory issues, you had more full motion, so you could expand further. But again, and I'll talk about this a little later, we're very conscious of qualitative issues, because there are certain environments where the classic static sign is far more valuable than digital. And how you understand that and develop that to deliver ROI for clients is a really critical component of what we do. And finally, the standby environments, traditionally digital plays a lot role. They can create a whole range of different unique opportunities in the way that you can develop the product and the way you engage with a consumer and therefore deliver results. The reality is we now have 2 great products at scale. Now I say at scale because we really didn't have digital at scale till about 12 months ago. So we've had growth, but we haven't really had it at scale. So we've now reached it at scale, still adding, still improving, yes, but we now have 2 great products. Classic is still unmissable. It builds brand fame. I heard the gentleman from the IPG talk about digital moving to building brand fame. You're quite correct, it does build brand fame digital for about this many clients. The rest of it's a transactional and medium, right? Go and look at the facts, and out-of-home is a bigger brand fame builder today across more clients. It has a great opportunity, it is doing that today. We do sell product, we have the proof. So Classic still sells products, and it's still local, and it's still relevant. The bottom ad I took from the Cannes Awards this year in France, and that was the winner of the Cannes Lion Award for Out of Home. Very simple, very engaging, very local, very relevant. And we still have all three of those characteristics. Digital also gives us those characteristics, but it adds to further ways that we can engage with mobile, further ways we can engage with content, further ways we can engage with context. And I will start now to show you some examples of what we did, because what I didn't mention is one of the things we said is we had to become experts in development of content and online. So we own a content development business. We own 8 online social sites. We're as big in Australia for, if you know of a brand called Vice globally, we're bigger than Vice in Australia for on millennials. We also create social content now in our studio. So if you're in Australia now, clients like Amex, Qantas and Westpac are one of our biggest banks. We're now producing very social media strategies, and we're showing them how to amplify that across out of home. And I'll touch on that a little bit more as we move forward. I'm going to use an example. We've seen some stories up here about programmatic and automated. I 100% agree with everything everyone said. But you've got to go on journeys to get there. In Australia, we are a public space medium as you are. As a public space medium, we have higher responsibilities than online. Overnight, I don't know if anyone saw in America, the social media agency who put up an ad for a burger joint. And they used the line thinking they were funny, playing on the American citizen who had his head chopped off by ISIS. They were really funny. Clearly, they've been sacked and there's been a major outcry over it. That's because in a lot of online areas, they do not understand public space media. So whatever you do, my best advice to you, take the best of digital, apply your better and smarter out-of-home thinking to it, because it is critical, because you will go backwards if you only think like a digital agency or a digital company, an online digital company. So if we take this example for Commonwealth Bank, what we wanted to prove is if you're going down an automated world, what do we need to learn about serving ads in real time? Not about how to do it. What do we have to learn about all the other things that are really important as public space mediums to meet the responsibilities that have just been touched on by the previous speaker? So we created a portal which was a creative delivery portal. We put it at the highest security standards. In this instance, Commonwealth Bank are our biggest bank in Australia. It actually went inside the banks, not the agencies, the bank's architecture. And the bank was then able to buy their digital component in a traditional manner, but then overlay their data and their creative in a different way based on the context they were trying to get by the geographies around Australia. And they could do that in all but real time with some people curation to make sure they weren't breaching any rules very quickly as they moved forward at speed changing. Why they did that is they had determined that one of the challenges they were facing is the creative agency would produce a great ad, but the cost to scale that for the multiple environments, both online and in out of home, was too expensive. So they employed an in-house team of designers to take that great idea, but then add all the data and overlays of their business practices and curate the ads that came from that themselves internally. Now, I want to say that's not unnormal. If you go back to when social media first started to grow, public relations companies answered all the clients' queries, all the queries for a client that came from their consumer. Today, any major organisation would do that themselves, because if they outsource total responsibility, you get the disaster I just talked about a few minutes ago, which is why the social agency's been sacked. So some of the things they were able to do from that led to different ways of thinking for them. And what that meant is different and new dollars for out of home. An example would be they worked out that their automatic teller machines could become research centres. So they had the biggest across Australia, automatic teller machines. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of people are going every day and taking money out. And while they were waiting, they'd ask one question. They knew because of their card where they lived, they were able to take it back not only to state, to by suburbs. They'd already booked thousands of screens of us across multiple environments, because it wasn't just about one environment. And they were able to change the copy to reflect answers to the questions. Showed them a totally different way to use context. and the way creative could be used. They became the first bank in Australia to announce that they wouldn't have fees when you withdrew money from an automatic teller machine. And as you would traditionally do, they would go out with the PR statement, they'd have some journos come to their office, the CEO would take interviews, and the news round that happened, whether it be online or that evening news, would all report this because it was a pretty big story. Every bank in Australia had to follow, and they did within 48 hours. At the same time, every out-of-home ad changed. So when people hadn't heard it on the news, they were seeing it on out-of-home across Australia. So those concepts that have been discussed by Matthew and others about context, digital-specific creative, flexibility, idea, speed, are all what automation and programmatic can deliver. But you can start to think of ways to deliver that today, still selling the same way, but giving more flexibility to people to create as you move towards understanding with your own systems and infrastructure how that you want to do it relative to your business and your market and the way you work. But there's more than that. Those of you who know anything about mobile and online, the reality is that if you're a publisher, used to be once upon a time that your revenue would all come, your online would come from display ads on PCs. The reality is today that 80% of the audience is on mobile and 20% of the audience for a publisher is on PC. Yet monetisation is the direct reverse. It's 80-20 the other way. And the reality is the experience of an ad, other than within Facebook, because of the size, is generally pretty average. The little banners along the bottom, some research done by an independent company in Australia so that 60% of the clicks on those were actually accidents. So they had no value whatsoever. So if they were doing I got X clicks, it was a lie because of fraud, to be fair. So the reality is that native content is a major part of that. Native content is when you create quality content that's inspired by the brand, but that then can be either put in context of location with out-of-home or in the case of online media's context of audience. In out-of-home, it could be a combination of both. And what that means that you can start to bring things into screens for brands. So whether they be the Westpac's, Qantas or Amex's, or whether they be tourism bodies, or whether they be Asahi Beer, or whether they be a whole range of others that we have worked with to prove that out-of-home in a scale digitisation environment is actually an amplification of either native content ads that you're producing, which they all are, the quality brands, into primary publications, or social media. Let's just remember that if you go and talk to Google or Facebook, they will tell you the perfect ad on their medium is no longer than 6 seconds, right? In their case, they will say full motion, captions, and it can have sound if you want, because most people aren't listening to it with sound, right? That's their perfect ad, the one that works the most. I think I just described a lot of out-of-home ads in the way I talked about that. So you can see that where the medium is moving, that this integration with online is becoming greater. And there's proof around that. Before I touch on this study, just let me give you a quick story. I don't know if you've heard of a travel company, a global travel company called Contiki. They run bus tours around the world, mainly for people under the age of 32. So their main target market is 18 to 32-year-olds who want to travel with a group of 18 to 32-year-olds. But within that, they have specific markets. Now, they traditionally, for the last 10 years, have effectively been online-only advertisers. They sat down and they were given a challenge by their board to get abnormal growth. No more money. How do you do it? Well, as the CMO said, how can I do it? I can't just stay online. So what they did is they identified that they normally ran their promotion for sales for the following European summer in September. So what they did is in July, they ran a program with a special offer for students. They went into 99 of our campuses. We created native content for them online and on the screens, and we created social media for them. The end result was a 300% increase in sales. Their board didn't want them to move offline. They moved into out-of-home, did it differently, 300% increase in sales. And when they finished the out-of-home campaign, they still left the deal if a student contacted them. The next month, they still had a 36% increase in sales. 100% down to an integrated out-of-home campaign produced and created the right way. We wanted to show, having done a lot of these campaigns, that the the science behind ads and content was going to work. So we ran a multiple series of neuro campaigns to work out which was the combination that was best working and was it the right way. And what we discovered, if you ran an ad, so we might run it for a week, say, and then you introduced native content with the ad different times. And native content, in the case of Kentucky, was things like Croatia was the hottest spots for people 18 to 22 at the time, was a story on Croatia, or a headline story with a picture on Croatia that people could get more detail if they went online. What we found is that not only did you get a 10% increase in engagement in terms of the communication and the viewership, but you got an 18% increase in memory encoding. Now, if many of you haven't done neuroscience, memory encoding is the thing that drives sales. So if you drive an 18% increase in memory encoding, you're driving your brand deeper into the psyche of someone. The consequence of that is you are likely to sell more product. It is a fact, a proven fact around the world, and I'm sure Tim's well aware of it because he does a lot of neuroscience as well. Quickly, regulations, we do have them, no different to here. We don't have full motion on a road. We have different states and different local governments with different rules. We have overcome that by showcasing data from around the world, and we have some data in Australia now too, so if you haven't got that, we're happy to share that with you. But one of the keys is we are now a major broadcast medium of anything, whether it be, as you saw, updates on events, it could be the latest news, it could be the biggest event, and it can be community benefit. So when you think of digital, don't just think of it playing ad, think of all the things that you could make. And the very simple rules quickly are, only change the best sites, because they're the ones that will sell quickest. Reduce the clutter, you heard about that today. Start with your high demand areas. If there's locations that are always in demand or areas that are always in demand, do them first. Try and get your creatives to start thinking in contextual ideas. It is hard, the ad industry is behind on that. You can determine as an industry some consistent sharing of pricing. We in Australia are now working on 10% of time as the consistent unit. So it doesn't matter how many rotations you have, it's time. So clients can buy 10, 20, 30, whatever they want, but that's what your pricing is. And you can charge for exclusivity if you want. We don't offer exclusivity. We wouldn't have any more than 2 advertisers on one sign, and we wouldn't have them back to back in any way, shape or form, but there doesn't have to be exclusivity in the context of how it works. Digital and classic create new revenue opportunities. That is the biggest moral of the stories. It offers you an unparalleled opportunity with digital to think community and to come up with more creative ideas to support governments. And with digital, think quality, not quantity, because it's quality that actually drives the impacts and the way it all works. If you do that, you're going to bring more engagement to advertisers, more moments in more ways, and you will sell more product for them, so they will spend more with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brendon Cook. You had all of us glued in and listening to you, but we've got some questions that have come in. Can we please have Ms. Vinku Chakraborty join us on stage now? She's got the iPad, she's got the questions chosen, and she's going to present you 3 questions from the audience members. 3 of the best questions according to her.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Brendon, for such a thought-provoking and insightful session. So while the session was going on, we have been inundated with lots of questions. So in the interest of time, we have shortlisted 3 questions for you. So I'll quickly go to the questions. Question number 1. This question has come from Lalita Sinha from Ajanta Advertisers. The question is, as India is soon going to see a rapid rise in the growth of digital media, what are the key things that a media partner should keep in mind before going 100% digital?
I think that first slide about drive-by, walk-by, stand-by is pretty important. You know, understand your environment, because I think environment does have different criteria. So there's no general question. If you're on a railway station, certain signs may be better. So think of the old rules you always work on. How do people engage with it? How do they see it? Clearly, if you stick with the principles I had at the end, you generally get significant revenue upside. What we've seen, the only time we haven't got strong revenue upside is where we've broken those principles. Thought we should put something up for whatever reason, or a property owner made us put something up, and inevitably that location doesn't earn the same revenues. So think quality. And it is an argument that you need to keep with the ad agencies because they will go impression a lot, which is why I asked that question. And impressions can lie over quality, and particularly if you're dealing with a lot of ad agency, younger people who are brought up in a digital world, they don't quite get the differences over qualitative impacts in reality.
Sure. Thank you. Neeraj Vaid from Madison has asked this question. In a country like ours, where local governing bodies are not forthcoming about spending on new technologies, how can we go to the next level of digitization? How did it all start in Australia? So he wants to understand some nuggets of wisdom from Australia. What all happened there? How it get started?
First thing I suppose you have to look at is you have to say, what if you don't do it? If you think about, we should learn from disruption in other industries. So that's the first thing you should do. Sure. If you look at the newspaper industry, I'm not certain here, but in Australia, classified ads, which was the ads to sell a car or real estate, was their rivers of gold. That's what's made them all the money. That was what was first disrupted by digital, yet it wasn't until later they start to realise they had to invest after they'd lost money, their valuations had declined. So I think in Out of Home's case, if you take an audience lens and you say the clients want flexibility, they still want the impact of classic, but they want the flexibility digital offers. You're seeing local government here is talking about reduction of clutter. All these things are saying to me that if there is a question you have to ask yourself, what if we don't? And the what if we don't means you are disrupted, but more importantly, you may miss the opportunity of growing your revenues and your profitability at the right time. The right time is the question, is the hard question. And I don't know the market well enough to give you the right time. The right time for us was we had all the same issues with government. It worked. The right time was because there was disruption of other media and therefore there was dollars going to be available. The dollars could be made available a lot easier. And the right time was because we realised if we didn't start, we were never going to get the growth opportunity, the once-in-a-generation growth opportunity that Out of Home has got. And if a market misses it, I don't think you can get it back. When that opportunity starts to arise, you want to be producing and scale. You can go a little slower. We accelerated the growth, all the outdoor companies accelerated their digital investment over the last 2 years, and again this year. But we had already been on the cycle of growth, and we've accelerated that primarily to be ready, to make sure that we're ready for the next wave of growth that is going to be about data, technology, and all the other things that we can connect differently with.
Shyam Babu from Adverts Advertising has asked this question. It's a very open-ended question, but a very interesting question. If we were to include public surveillance, neural sciences, and artificial intelligence into out of home, what would be the pros and cons?
What was the first part of that? I've heard the artificial.
Public surveillance.
Public.
Yeah.
Well, firstly, artificial intelligence in its true term is a long way away. Let's remember that. We're only at the machine learning era. Everyone uses AI inappropriately. We're a long way from being AI. Talk to anyone, they'll tell you that. So machine learning is what we're really talking about in many areas. And how we bring that, it still allows us to write the rules, if you like, because machines are learning off us rather than learning themselves to the degree that we're talking with artificial intelligence sometime down the track. So I think the public service component of that is probably really important. I think that more and more we've got to realise, I think one of the KPMG figures was something like the one TV per household, the generation of screens, that there is a whole particularly in this country, a whole communication issue that's changing, and you can play a role in that communication issue. And by playing that role in that communication issue, you are not only making the screens you have more valuable to advertisers, you're making more valuable to the community. And I think in reality, if you can get that mix right, you will in fact grow your medium and grow your business substantially.
We asked you 3 questions. You have to pick up the best question.
Number 2, there we go.
Neeraj Vaid?
Yeah, number 2.
Okay. Neeraj Vaid, you win a prize.
Congratulations, Neeraj Vaid. Ladies and gentlemen, he walks away with a big fact check, 10,000 rupees, all his, because he asked the right question at the right time. Please make sure that you upload your questions onto the OAC Asia 2018 app as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Brendon Cook. Ladies and gentlemen, for our speaker.